like I said, he was a member of the VFW and the American Legion. I remember I went with him once to the American Legion post. I was just a kid. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 8. And we went in, and I sat up at the bar, and he bought me a Coke. And I'm sitting up there on the bar, and there's all these men sitting there, and they're all talking. And they were very polite to me. They all said hi, and a couple of them shook my hand, because I guess they all knew my father, and they were all talking about war stories and people that they had known and things like that. And I was sitting there listening, and my father was off talking to some other man. He wasn't too far away, but I couldn't really hear what they were saying. And didn't think much of it. I was, I thought I was a big kid all of a sudden sitting at the American Legion with all these veterans sitting up at the bar drinking a Coke, eating peanuts out of a bowl on the bar. They had a jar of salted peanuts, and I was sitting there eating peanuts and drinking a Coke at the American Legion. It was the first time in my life I'd ever been in a bar, and I was sitting there drinking a Coke, and I didn't think much about it. I figured, well, he's a veteran. It makes sense that he could come here. So I checked with the American Legion and the VFW, because surely they had to have records. They had to be some way to prove that he was a legitimate veteran to be a member, because otherwise anybody could just walk in off the street and say, hey, I'm a veteran, I'd like to join. They have to have some kind of paperwork to prove something, especially the VFW, because you have to be a veteran of a foreign war. You had to actually have fought overseas in a campaign. And so when I called the VFW post that he belonged to and asked them, I said, well, is there any way you can get a copy? I need a copy of this DD-214. It's a discharge paper. That's what you have to give to the government to get a military burial. And that was all we were after, was a flag for his coffin. If he was a veteran, then I figured he deserved his honor guard. He deserved his flag. And they said, well, we don't have a copy of it. A lot of the records were lost in a fire. And I did verify that there was a huge fire. It burnt for days. And many thousands, if not millions of pieces of paper were destroyed, not by fire, but by water, to put the fire out, because they had to pour water in it to put it out. So it was just odd that every place I went, I could never verify anything. And I know a lot of veterans don't like to talk about their history because it hurts them. They have friends that they remember and things that happened that weren't pleasant. About people that were killed and things that had happened to them and stuff like that. And so they didn't talk about it much. And my father was no different, I guess. I know sometimes he would just sit and he'd get this far away look and he wouldn't say anything, but I can always tell he was thinking about something. I never knew what. But there were some times when like we'd watch TV and we'd watch this one show. I remember it was on I think it was on in the 70s or 80s. I don't really remember, but it was called Baba Black Sheep. And it was about the VMF 214, the fighter squadron with Greg Boyington, who was this flying ace that was a ragtag bunch of pilots that did all kind of stuff and chased nurses and got in bar fights and stuff like that. Flew bomber escorts. My father told me, we were sitting there one night watching this show, and I don't remember if it come on Tuesday or Wednesday night, I don't remember, but anyway, he said he was a pilot, and he flew a B-17 bomber. And I remember thinking, well, that makes sense that he would like this show, because the little fighters were the people that escorted the bombers on the bombing runs, so they were the kind of guys that looked out for you, So it made sense that he would maybe it made him remember something that he enjoyed doing, because I know that, he told me that he was a pilot and he must have loved flying, even though for all of my life I'd never known him to fly his own airplane, but I guess he did at some point, or at least he said he did. The only thing that he ever told me about his military stuff, we were out on the boat, we were out in the Gulf Stream, way out fishing in the beautiful blue water. never forget. Somehow the subject of the military came up or something. I don't know how. It was strange. It just did. And he said I had a Q clearance, and they would still come for me even today if I talked about it, and I can't talk about it. And that was all he said. So after he was dead, I got to digging around about what the clearances were and stuff. I didn't know. Well, it turns out a Q clearance is something issued by the Department of Energy at the time, and it's equivalent to a top secret clearance, and it has something to do with the production of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, I don't know what my father did with those programs or what his job was, but he said he was Q cleared, which, like I said, was top secret clearance, and that they would still come for him if he talked about it. And other things would happen. Strange things would happen. Like I remember one day I came home and my mom said, I got a strange phone call. And I said, well, who called? And she said, the man said he was the head of international banking for a very large international bank. And if I told you the name, you would know it immediately. It's such a huge name in banking that everybody knows it. And she said, he asked me how I was, and he asked me how you were. By name, he knew my name. And she told him we were fine. And he said, do you need anything? Are you all right? And she said, no, we're fine. We're getting by. And he gave her his direct line, his phone number to call if she needed anything. And I said, I didn't want to call my mother a liar, but it just sounded so far-fetched. I said, it sounds crazy. He said, well, here's the number, call it. So I called it, and he answered. I mean, it wasn't a switchboard, it wasn't a secretary, it wasn't an assistant. It was a direct line to his desk, and he picked it up. And I said, sir, and I give him my name. I said, you called my mother and indicated that you know my father and asked how we were and things. And I just wondered, how did you know my father? He denied ever calling. And it had just happened not long before I'd gotten home. It could have been more than an hour. I said, sir, not meaning to be disrespectful, but how is it that I have your private phone number to your desk if you never called here? I couldn't have possibly just guessed this number because it was a long distance number. It was by no means local. And he said, I'm sorry, you're mistaken. And he hung up, and I never called back. And as far as I know, neither did he. But those are some of the things that happened.